Time for some business news now. Stephen Carroll's here. And Stephen, we're starting with Volkswagen and reports that a deal's been reached with US authorities over the emissions cheating scandal.
Under this framework deal that's set to be confirmed later on, Volkswagen will offer to buy back around 500,000 diesel cars in the United States that were fitted with so-called defeat devices. Sources speaking to the Reuters news agency say the car maker could also offer to fix the affected cars if an acceptable fix is agreed with US authorities. The deal will be announced to a federal judge in San Francisco later and is expected to include a compensation fund of around $1 billion. The judge had ordered Volkswagen to come up with a plan to take the polluting cars off the road by today. It's not clear, though, if this agreement will resolve a civil suit being taken by the US Justice Department against Volkswagen. The carmaker is also expecting to be fined over the environmental damage caused and, in addition, is facing criminal investigations in the United States and in other countries as well.
Meanwhile, Mitsubishi Motors is dealing with its own emissions scandal.
Yes, shares in the Japanese carmaker have been suspended from trading in Tokyo after slumping 15% for a second day in a row. The company announced on Wednesday that it had falsified fuel economy data for some 600,000 cars sold in Japan. Mitsubishi is now investigating whether the issue affects any other models sold in Japan or overseas.
これ単純な事象でございませんので、少しお時間いただきたいというふうに思っております。影響するのはもう間違いございません。なおかつかなりダメージは大きいというふうに思っております。
Apologies, seem to have a problem with the translation of that clip of the president of Mitsubishi Motors. Let's move on with a look at what's happening on the stock markets. A rise in oil prices is helping Asian shares today. You can see the Nikkei in Tokyo up 2.7% at the close. That's despite that slump in Mitsubishi Motors. Gains too across the rest of the Asian markets. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong up by 1.5%.
And the markets will be very interested as well in what's happening in Frankfurt today.
The European Central Bank will be announcing its interest rate decision, and we'll be hearing from ECB President Mario Draghi. He's already cut the deposit rate, which is what the ECB pays money that banks have lodged with it, to minus 0.4%. Other European countries have also been experimenting with negative interest rates. It's left some banks actually paying their borrowers interest. Diptyque Laurent has more.
10 years ago, Pierre Lambert and his wife bought this house for 150,000 euros in Belgium. The interest rate at the time was 2.3%. Just a month ago, their bank told them that their interest rate had dropped into negative territory. The bank would be paying to lend them money.
On était autour de 900 euros mensuels.
We were paying around 900 euros a month. Now we're at about 690 euros a month, which is a really worthwhile saving for us. It's money in our pockets each month.
Homeowners can pay interest at a fixed rate when borrowing money from banks. This rate never changes. They can also choose a variable rate, which fluctuates according to market conditions. Borrowing costs have tumbled as the European Central Bank tries to stimulate the Eurozone economy. In a bid to stimulate spending and investments, the ECB has been bringing down some interest rates below zero. While borrowers might be rejoicing, there are concerns that it may trigger a borrowing spree and result in people being unable to repay their loans if interest rates go up. It could also hit the bottom line of banks.
If effectively the situation lasts, it means that banks will be making less and less money.
Denmark's central bank first experimented with negative interest rates in 2012, and it has stayed there ever since. Sweden and Switzerland have also followed suit.
Well, let's look ahead to what Mario Draghi might tell us later on. And we're joined by Naeem Aslam, Chief Market Analyst at Avatrade. Thanks for coming in, as always, to speak to us about the European Central Bank meetings. Pretty eventful last time around. Mario Draghi increased the amount they're spending on bond buying per month and cut the deposit rate further into negative territory. Should we expect more from him today?
Thanks for having me. I would say that the market participants are very much avaricious going into this. They are expecting a lot more bazooka. That's not going to happen because he already has triggered 3 big strategies, which you have already mentioned. But let's look at the impact of the negative interest rates, because obviously it is having a massive impact on the banks. So what does that relate in terms of a euro? Is the euro is going to go up or the euro is going to go lower? Central bank is very limited how much they can reduce the interest rate. So what I would believe, they are not going to do anything in relation to interest rates. Well, today, for sure, they are not going to do anything at all. So what he will have a very open-ended conversation that the ECB is standing pat with respect to their strategies, and they will still be able to combat this inflation. But they will not move interest rates anytime soon. They would perhaps use other ways of boosting this quantitative easing in this market, and by buying corporate bonds and by issuing more TLTROs. So the overall impact would be very much limited for the euro. I think the bias is more perhaps skewed towards the upside rather than towards the downside.
And Naeem, are we seeing any effects from those measures announced recently, the latest measures from the ECB?
I would say it is slightly difficult to say, but if you look at the economic sentiment which has been released, even though it has a very fickle nature, but if you look at it, the number is kind of going up. But the real impact, what he has described or what he has unleashed in his recent meeting, hasn't made any impact on this data. We still would have to wait for another quarter in order to see. So in this meeting today, he's going to try to buy more time, and he's going to say, okay, we need to see how these strategies are really working. And then perhaps we'll be able to fine-tune our strategies accordingly.
You talked there about the open-ended conversation people will be waiting for. Are there triggers in that the markets are hoping to hear? Are they hoping to hear comments on, specific potential future measures, potential future moves? What are the markets watching out for today?
I think we are in very peculiar territory, because we have never been in a negative interest rate territory. So no one knows what exactly is going to happen with this negative interest rates. Yes, the US has done the quantitative easing, but it was very difficult. So the market would be able to see, is he going to say something? One element which you really love is your helicopter money flying around all over. Is he going to come and deliver that? No. They will say, okay, we are looking at it, but in very much in academic terms, nothing in the real. So he will have perhaps more. He will say more about the reforms. We need more reform works. So many affairs are already taking place in France and in Spain. So he will perhaps emphasize more on reforms, and then will say the quantitative easing itself cannot create those results if reforms are not there.
Is there a credibility issue here as well? We know that Mario Draghi has come in for criticism for his policies from politicians in Germany, for example. Does he need to reinforce as well that he knows what he's doing and that he's in control?
I think he is constantly battling against German or against other colleagues that, okay, whether the quantitative easing is really working or not. But if you look at the chart that we have, hawks and doves from the ECB, you will see that some of the members are already shifting from hawkish side to the dovish side, and that they are saying, okay, perhaps the ECB was correct in order to defend their strategy or in order to fight this inflation that we are facing in the market. So yes, he is still facing too much or mammoth challenges when it comes to it. But still, I think there's an enormous amount of work which needs to be done. And then Draghi is very much committed with respect to that.
Okay, we're watching that closely as it happens later in the day. Naeem Aslam, Chief Market Analyst, Avatrade, thank you for joining us here this morning.
And finally, one for you, Stephen. Adele's latest album has earned a nice little amount, hasn't it?
At least according to the Sunday Times Rich List, they've named her Britain's richest ever female musician, worth £85 million or around €108 million. That figure's increased by £35 million since last year. Adele released her album 25 to critical acclaim, but also huge sales, over 15 million copies sold worldwide. Now, the singer chose not to release the record to streaming services like Spotify. That's helped her to add more to that tidy sum from the album.
Stephen there with the business. Thank you very much to Stephen and to our guest, Naeem Aslam. Thank you both.